welcome back. Our next guest this is not his first time on the show, but we love it when he's here. Dave Humphrey is with us. He is from Kirkman Labs, we love Kirkman Labs, but he's not here to talk about that because he is also someone who is a mover and shaker and making things move forward, not just for autism, but for the wellness of our young people. And so I don't want to spoil it because he's got a lot of things that he's going to talk to us about, but I mentioned to you before that this is going to blow your mind. This is cutting edge stuff. Whenever I have thought to myself, oh, I hope that there are brighter minds than me someplace working on this and talking to each other and taking all of the science and putting it together so that we can arrive at something fabulous, I want you to know Dave is the answer to those prayers and that he is working with those people to make those things happen. So yippee. And Dave, I love you. You know that I do. And I'm always so excited when you're going to be on the show because the stuff you talk about gets me excited and keeps my motor running for another 6 months.
Well, kind words, and thank you so much. And I really love being on the show because it's important for us to communicate as a community where things are going. You know, we had this great man, Bernie Rimland, that basically brought the community together and had it look at things that are true. And I've really just built on Bernie's work. I was his attorney for a lot of years. And Bernie started a foundation that I now run it's now called the Forum. And he started with $100,000. And that started the Autism Treatment Network, which was Mass General, Columbia, and a number of other different leading institutions. Bernie knew we would never see a lot of kids treated there. But what they did do is we were able to raise a total of more than $100 million with the help of Autism Speaks to basically set out the medical protocols for autism. And the reason for that is we now have insurance in all 50 states. And autism is now seen by almost everybody as a medical condition. And when I first started with this, when your children went to a doctor during that time, the doctor sent them to psychiatrists, and their medical conditions were never treated. This was absolutely horrendous, even though they had diarrhea and projectile vomiting. So that's the atmosphere we came from. So things have changed, but we have to take a look at where we go now. And I want to talk about, I don't know, do we have a slide?
We do. We're going to go ahead and start with this because you've got some great slides. Yeah.
Talking not for Kirkman, as she mentioned, but for the Forum, which is not well known in the autism community, but it's the largest U.S. think tank in the world for special needs children. And I greatly value that my partner from day one has been Doreen Grand-Fichet of CARD, and she's helped me put together some of the leading people in the country. And she is self-described with me as a Rimlandite. So, you know, Doreen has always been a wonderful inspiration. She's on our board. Next slide is just an indication of the people that we've recruited. You see names like Harni Atash from NIH and Bob Hendren that ran the program for psychiatry for pediatrics, chair of that institution. And he was up at he ran the Mind Institute for Autism in University of Cal Berkeley. So I try to bring people in that can affect medical policy. And Jeannie Connery ran Kaiser's program and had the OBGYN. So we try to get people in that medical people will listen to. Underneath all of this is a parent movement, which is our guide, and our constituency is the parents. So the next slide basically deals with the parable, and I won't read it, but it's basically saying at the ever-increasing number of children that are found in front of us, we need to go upstream and see who's pushing these kids in. And that has been the big problem we've had so far, is that we've been battling a generic description of autism, a hardwired description. These kids are preconditioned. Therefore, there's very little treatment, there's very little prevention, there's very little prediction, and that has been entirely incorrect, and it has shaped the discussion with autism. And the next slide is what I want everybody to at least be aware of. I would consider this the most important study I've seen in 20 years. It just came out of the NIH and the EPA. The CDC has already supported it. It is basically a 120-page summary of every major chronic disease that we are facing in this country with incredibly high rates of increase. Autism is a prime chronic disease they discuss in this 120-page report. This is the result of 23 studies and institutions that are coming to the same conclusion. We go back to that previous slide. There's a punchline there.
The parable.
And the conclusion that we found is the next slide. The conclusion in that report on the next slide is that 60% of autism, according to the NIH, is caused by toxins during the pregnancy period. This is a watershed moment in autism because at a 60%, we no longer have a genetic model anymore. It's no longer caused by the genes. And the trouble is that almost all of the research money in autism was going into finding what genes were involved with autism. We now know what they are. It's about 150. But here's the dark secret. The dark secret is that the research was not meant to treat autism. It was meant to allow OBGYNs to recommend abortions to those parents that had a child with those autism genes. Think about that for a second. The parents are covering the same genes. If that decision would have been made when they were in gestation, they would have been aborted, right, Shannon?
Yes,
I mean,
it's unthinkable. It's absolutely unthinkable. And it denies what some of the gifts are in this population that we need. It's horrifying to think about.
Well, I had a lot of talks with Temple Grandin about this, and she's of the same thought, that what we have is the autism genes are not causing the autism. The autism genes are in the middle cortex of the brain, and they are creating an expansion of the middle cortex. That's why we have such brilliant Asperger's kids. And with autism, it is underneath the surface because the damage done by toxins during the pregnancy period damage the frontal lobal area of the brain. The autism genes just made that damage susceptible. And when they do not have the damage done to the frontal lobal area, these kids turn out to be our scholars. The IQs are 120 or 130. Doreen actually took 1-year-olds that had very, very early warning signs, but not autism yet. And she used a program called the Early Start Denver Model Program. Not only did none of those kids get autism that were 50% likely to get it, but they averaged 127 in their IQs. We need to unlock that potential. We need to make sure that we understand the mechanisms for autism. So on the next slide, that you have there, we're next going to talk on the next slide, is that it's not just autism. We have a problem with miscarriages. 30% of all miscarriages is a figure that we use in this country. Half the women don't even realize they are miscarrying at the time. They just have repeated failures to get pregnant. Preterm is at least 10%, 11% of all births. The big problem there is it reduces IQs by 10 or 15 points, reduces life expectancy by 10 years. But then look at everything else. Autism is now 1 in 36 for the new CDC figures. Asthma is 1 in 8. Allergic eczema, 1 in 5. It goes down. Serious food allergies, 1 in 12. Cancer, my daughter works for St. Jude, the leading cancer hospital. It's 1 in 200 kids getting leukemia. So second leading cause of death. So all of these conditions, autism sort of leads the pack, but autism is part of a condition caused by damage done to the brain, damage done to the system during the pregnancy period. So the next slide, we talk about what this looks like. It looks like 35% miscarriages, like I mentioned, 30 to 35%. With preterm in the United States is 12. Developmental disability, 25%. But Shannon, 20% of all the kids have anxiety and depression issues by the time they're 5, diagnosed in the psychiatric community. Underlying those depression and anxiety are children that have unusual high levels of pesticides and toxins in their system. And it affects the brain during the development, but they never get rid of these toxins during their childhood. And it creates a lifetime condition and leads to dementia, Parkinson's, You take a Parkinson's patient, do a tox screen on them, and they're loaded with toxins, including high levels of arsenic and other conditions. Okay, the next slide deals with where are we looking at in terms of medicine. And the left-hand chart is almost all the conditions in medicine were measles, mumps, rubella, so forth. Pretty easy to come in, broken arms, doctor takes care of it. Now look at the right-hand column. All of these conditions are being substituted with autoimmune conditions, asthma, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's, autism. They're all going up at exponential amounts. It's because the child is being damaged during the period of gestation and early childhood by a sea of chemicals that we never saw before.
Okay.
The next slide deals just with where it comes from. Where it comes from is every place. It comes from flame retardant in mattresses. It comes from arsenic in rice. It comes from air pollution that just goes out the window. And the food quality that we take is deficient, so we don't really have the protection against these toxins. And it's going to get into an area I'll talk about, which is called glutathione levels. And many of you may have heard it. It's probably the single most important word in the detox movement is glutathione. And that is how the body gets rid of these toxins. Jill James, a great researcher in the autism community, found early on that kids with autism have unbelievably low levels of glutathione all of their lifetime. So they accumulate toxins like you put money into the bank and never take it out. After a while, you have a lot of money. Well, that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing with toxins. So glutathione levels are extremely low, and that makes it very difficult for the child and the adult, and it is a lifetime of disorders and autoimmune conditions. Next is, let's get an example of some stunning research, and we've read thousands of papers. The forum is a wonderful think tank. We've got great people, so we have scientists constantly look at this. This is a study out of Israel. And Shannon, this is a really important study because what they did here was they took prenatal supplements, not really fancy, vitamin D, folic acid, B vitamins. Most of the doctors would say, oh, you get those from food. Okay, they took women who took these 6 months before pregnancy. For those women that took supplements 6 months before pregnancy, their autism was half, 61% lower than those that didn't. This obviously is not a genetic condition because you couldn't take supplements and reduce Down syndrome, which is clearly a genetic condition. So this means autism is predictable, preventable, treatable, and recoverable. Once we understand the underlying mechanisms, what is driving the autism and cause the damage, then we can start taking a look at unraveling that, and we can start talking about dramatic improvements in the child's condition, their behavior, their ability to learn, and their ability to progress in school. And we're seeing that all the time. In the recent CDC figures, 15 years ago, only 1% of the parents reported that their child lost the diagnosis of autism. In the last CDC figures, 25% of the parents reported that their child had lost the diagnosis of autism. This is not being reported. It's not being understood because of the genetic genetic prejudice we have on autism. Autism is not a genetic condition. The majority is driven on the underlying cause by toxicity. Okay, next slide. So the program that we go ahead and we improve the condition with pregnancy, with kids, with adults is really simple. And it is that we measure the toxins every 6 months. So if you go in and you see a doctor and the doctor says, hey, Shannon, I think I'm going to give you high blood pressure medication, you say, you don't even know me. You haven't done any measurements. Why are you saying that? You'd never accept it. So why take a supplement? Why take a treatment without knowing your toxic levels? The first step is you've got to know what they are. And most people, when they see them, they are so shocked. They say, what do I do? I never realized I'm loaded with arsenic and mercury and lead. I'm loaded with them. Okay, the first thing is you increase glutathione. Glutathione is the way that you detox your body. And you can measure glutathione. It's a very simple test to take. The glutathione measurements is they increase, you can pour out toxins from your body. And glutathione can't be taken as a supplement. The cysteine and glycine are two amino acids that tend to build glutathione, and we've done that in the work we've done, and the glutathione levels go up. My grandchild was very high levels of lead, and he wasn't autistic, but he still had high levels. We increased his glutathione after measuring it very low. Within 4 or 5 months, his lead levels were normal, and they were unbelievably high. It was from the lead in their pipes.
So can I stop you though for a second?
Sure.
Where do we go to get the test for the toxins? Because obviously I don't walk into my regular GP and say, test me for toxins. He's going to say, what are you talking about? Who do I go to get tested for the toxins?
And here is where I've got to throw a commercial in.
Okay.
Because I've been working for 5 years. We've spent $5 million at Kirkman in developing non-invasive tests for urine and blood, which we can read the 240 toxins in a very low-cost test. So anybody can access this test. They can find out their toxic levels of the 240 known toxins that damage you. It's non-invasive. It's either done with urine or a drop of blood or even a patch on the arm that we're developing. And we believe we can be the leaders in the field. There are other people that will likely do it. And it's all CLIA certified, which means that we're regulated by state agencies that send us blinded tests of toxins, and we have to match and make sure they're done.
And I can get this test today, though, Dave? I can go online, go to kirkmanlabs.com, and I can get the test and order it?
It's Purity Laboratories, and we've got a 20,000-foot location here. And the tests are going to be validated and will probably be available in August. And it is going to be able to make it very easy for everybody to measure their glutathione, measure their toxic level. And we did this because of the need to do this for people during their pregnancy. But I tell you, it's exactly, and many parents measure their metals level, but this goes to the level that is really important, and that's the pesticides. And here's the good news, Shannon.
Yeah.
If you know your level of pesticides and you see them, and you take things to avoid them, and we can tell based on the pesticides where they're coming from, in 1 month, you'll reduce your toxic load by 90%, because most pesticides have a half-life of only 30 days. So if you're able to know what you have in them and how to avoid them, your body can completely go ahead and change the risk factor within 30 to 60 days. You can't do it without measurement. It's like high blood pressure. You know the medicine's working because your blood pressure comes down. So the goal is starting with preconception all the way through end of life, is for people to be aware, because if toxins are causing 90% of the chronic disease of this country, 60% of the autism, we have to start measuring, and that's why I did this. And we'll keep the tests as low as we can, because we want people to be able to understand what they are and compare them with period to period. And
Okay.
I hate to give a commercial in here, but nobody else is doing it.
No, we need the information. Somebody has written in on YouTube, though, with a question wanting to know, what are the impacts of drug abuse by mother and continued exposure through breast milk? I'm sure that's horrid.
Well, I really wish I could sit down with her, because we've done this for 5 years. First of all, drug addiction, 17% of the women take opioids during their pregnancy period, and affects the baby. It is legal drugs, which is the largest problem. Obviously, street drugs are not a good idea. That there is no barrier within the placenta for protecting the fetus from things that genetically it hasn't seen before. All of these are things in the last 50 years. And then when we test breast milk, it is really, really bad. It has 100 times the level of antimony, which is flame retardant. So we're trying to go ahead and in the P2I program we have, that we're going to be doing CME training of doctors, there isn't a single woman that once she has the baby should be sleeping on a mattress without a barrier protection. She shouldn't be sitting on her sofas without a barrier protection, because that flame retardant gets into her breast milk. The sad thing is that if breast milk were sold as a commercial product, it wouldn't be legal to sell because of the degree of contamination in human breast milk.
Wow. Okay. it's it's emotional to hear this because sometimes it feels overwhelming. But I love that we're in the part where you're telling us how we can change it and how effective it can be when we change it. So you said step one, measuring the toxins. Step two is increasing the glutathione. But I need you to talk again about, you don't just take glutathione. You said, what do you take? The two things that raise it?
Yeah, glutathione, in order to increase glutathione, Jill James came up with a really great formula, and it was to take the amino acid building blocks that go into making glutathione, and by doing that, the glutathione naturally builds in the body. Another way to increase glutathiones is to get rid of the toxins, because the toxins actually cause glutathione to be lowered. And Skip Kingston is a favorite of mine. He's at Duke University. Shannon, this is a really cool $3 million study he just ran. He took kids with autism and put them in a clean room that they normally have mass spec machinery, and this is the cleanest air in the world. And he had them there for 30 days, and the results were nothing short of astounding. What happened is, with that clean air and without breathing any toxins in, glutathione levels went up quite dramatically, and the excretion of toxins increased dramatically, which indicated that the body, being relieved of the burden of polluting substances around them, started to work better. Glutathione levels naturally increased. So
wow.
There is a lot to be learned. And how do we make a clean room? Well, the easiest thing to do is put a HEPA filter in the bedroom of the child. The HEPA filter will take out about 95% of the contaminants in the air. And it's to get rid of things that collect contaminants. No child should have carpeting in the room, for example. There should be a barrier on their mattress. So we're going to try to go ahead and do publications in the form of telling people how do they go ahead and at least have one safe room. I'd also have HEPA filters. I have HEPA filters in every room in my house. And I've got a little measurement tool showing me how much cleaner my air is 10 times cleaner than the outside air.
Wow.
And I think, again, we can't change the outside air, but 90% of our time is inside. And the POPs, which are persistent organic pollutants, are very, very damaging to the child. So again, there's some pretty simple solutions. The other step in that process is there's about 7 different natural compounds, such as selenium and vitamin C and other B vitamins that naturally will remove toxins from the blood much faster without them. Most people, when we test them, are so low in selenium, and selenium is one of the prime drivers. So the 4-step process is measure your toxins, increase your glutathione, take supplements or food that naturally remove toxins from the system by pulling them out, and then change your environment. And if you do those things, you'll be in the top 5% of the people without toxins, and you'll be a ton healthier, have healthier babies. So let's give an example. David Berger, I think David is one of the best doctors we have in the autism community.
I love
He's
David.
selected 600 babies. And let's take a look at David's numbers by going through this protocol I just described with Mother. David's numbers are, out of the 600 babies, 1% miscarriages, 1%. Shannon, that's down from 35%.
Which is normal for the world.
Yes, that's so-called normal. How many preterm babies for David? Birth defects, intelligent loss. David's only had 2 or 3 out of 600 that are preterm. They all go to full term. And what about childhood disease? What about the 38% we're experiencing? David Berger has no childhood disease in his practice. A few kids with eczema, no autism, no leukemia. Since we did the look at David's clinic, and we brought the CDC down that validated these results he's been having. Since we've talked to him, he's had 400 more births, exactly the same results. We found 5 other doctors with the same results. This stuff works. And what David did is he just does what he does with kids with autism. He cleans up their diet, right, Shannon?
Yeah.
He makes sure they reduce the toxins. So David did this to women before they had a baby. And it's the most accidental, brilliant work I've seen in my life. And it's going to change medicine. And I've been working on this ever since. Bernie Rimland, by the way, helped me write something in Autism Society of America. This magazine was published 10 years ago, and it was entitled Autism and Environmental Health and Autism. And Bernie had an editorial there predicting that what we're going to see is the rise of the environmental movement, which will demonstrate that autism is caused by the environment, and the way out of this mess is to control people's control of the environment in their bodies. And that was Bernie's message, and that was 12 years ago. That's why Bernie is such a visionary. And that's why Doreen and I have stayed very close to what we learned from Bernie, is that we can get these kids better. So,
well, I want to go on to this next slide that you had, which talks about the Purity Labs, and these are the tests that you had talked about. Now, correct, did you say that these are available now, or they're not available for a couple of months?
No, the tests have got to be validated through state agencies, and that's just a formality, but it takes us about 4 or 5 months more. But we will have we've already identified and completed the chemical toxicity test, 240 chemicals that will be tested and can be measured, and a beautiful chart showing which ones they are. And by the way, this is non-invasive. This is either urine or a drop of blood. Either one can work. The other one is heavy metals test, and the other one is a nutritional sufficiency test. We'll measure glutathione, selenium, vitamin C to see how well the body has these essential things to detox. This is going to be great, and parents can order it directly. They don't have to order it through their doctor. And we are in favor of the democratization of laboratory testing so parents can get control of it. We'll also do the standard ones, the IgG test, the IgA food sensitivity tests, and the standard tests. And again, we love working with doctors, but a lot of parents can't afford to go to a doctor, get a test done, get results, and have a $1,000 bill. This can be under $100 for most of these tests.
Okay, but we need them sooner as opposed to later. So what can we do to help you to get this to market sooner?
Nothing. I've got 9 PhDs working for me, and I've got them working and eating hot soup and sandwiches. And we already do 100 tests for the anti-aging community, and that's been a major part. It was on Shark Tank, the show Shark Tank.
Yes.
And we do STD tests, other kinds of tests, but we're now focusing on the toxicity area. So,
all right. Well, we'll look forward to that. But
I'll announce it so parents will know about it. But
okay.
But my dream on this is that the parents will talk to other parents and help each other. How do we remove toxins, and where does this come from? Because when we've done toxicity tests on individuals that think they're eating right,
yeah,
they don't realize a single trip to Red Lobster once every 2 weeks can load them up with so many toxins, because those shrimp come from Vietnam and Thailand, that they don't live in clean water. They live in the sewage water from the runoff of the villages. There's no inspection of these things when they come. We get berries in the wintertime, and we think, oh, we're eating some berries. They're coming from other countries where DDT is used to keep the bugs off. So when people get their measurements, they start to understand they have to change their habits. They can't do something 90% of the way. So they've got to eat organic food. And they've got to go ahead and have things clean in their homes. And they've got to increase their glutathione. The good news is, Shannon, if we do it, you can be in the top 5% of a clean body with a simple 4-step program that works.
Okay, but we need the program. So we can start now before the testing by cleaning up our diet. And you're saying don't go, because I've always said go as organic as you can possibly go, but you're saying get yourself organic.
Yeah, get yourself organic. Now, Environmental Working Group lists the 10 biggest dangers. So I can eat an orange and be a lot safer because that's a pretty thick skin on it. Right. But a peach will contain 50 times more toxins. And Environmental Working Group has the worst ones to buy. You don't have to buy all organic.
Okay.
But, for example, why buy apple juice if it contains arsenic? If you know that, why not get, organic apple juice? And Costco's prices are now about the same as normal prices on organic. Organic is our revolution. But also, right away, do some simple things in your home right away. Get HEPA filters. Costco has them for $99, the best bang for your dollar you can do. And the testing program will be ready sometime around July, and we'll have plenty of capacity. But I wanted to make sure that we got our capacity of the number of toxins we could test. This is really new science.
Yeah.
It's a single drop of blood, a small amount of urine, very low-cost test on machines that cost $500,000.
And is Jill James' recipe for supplements to take to raise your glutathione, is that available someplace that we can read it?
If you go to Jill James glutathione, it has the formula down, and I don't want to do anything commercial on supplements, but obviously a lot of companies are going to start to make the same formula Jill James came up with. It works.
But,
We've seen
but
hundreds
I
and
will
hundreds.
say it for you. It's available through Kirkman Labs, and I love Kirkman. You guys are amazing. There's clean supplements. You're responsible, and you've been serving the autism community for many, many years, and you're working to make things better. So I will say Kirkman Labs. Go to Kirkman and get them. So you don't have to say it.
One thing that Kirkman did is the reason we invested in all this machinery is we were noticing the supplements we were getting were having really high levels of contamination, as you know, Shannon. And they were all avoiding the issue, and most of the raw materials are coming from China. We now make supplements that have just no contamination. I mean, the levels are so low that they can't be measured. And this is absolutely critical because you can't be swallowing supplements to reduce your toxicity while you're adding toxins in the supplement.
Yeah, that doesn't work. So if we go on Kirkman Labs website and we're looking for the Jill James, is there something that tells us, or we need to go find out what that is first and then go to Kirkman?
I really try to be really careful here to not go into Kirkman because
we'll leave it alone.
Not that we really want to do. I'm sort of speaking for the forum here, but we encourage people to look at Glutathione, understand Jill James's work, and there's plenty of choices available. And again, we're not looking to have any cornering of the market. We want people to understand Glutathione, what it does. This is a form and a function deal, not a curing disease deal.
Fabulous. And so let's pivot now to P2I and your global 3D virtual teaching.
Well, what is very obvious from this discussion is there's a ton of information that people need from an unbiased source, which would be the forum. And with the forum, we are putting up a 3D virtual site. We're hoping to have it up sometime the latter part of this year. And what it will mean is you can go on that site and you can find everything you need to know about toxins, about the way your body works from reputable scientists. You can take CME courses in detoxifying. P2I will help you during the pregnancy period. And it's almost like you're an avatar in a game. You can jump into a conference. For a long time, parents have wanted to go to autism conferences, and they just can't afford to do it. And here's a screenshot of what will look. You will be an avatar going to all these wonderful locations. And by the way, we're working with IBM Watson. IBM Watson will answer all of your questions just like you would ask a doctor. Doctor, is this lipstick got too much lead? Yes, it does. It has this much lead. So what we're trying to do is this campus is free. The resources will be free. IBM Watson will be free because we want parents to say, I can spend hours and hours on the campus. I can take the CME courses. I can ask questions. I can talk to other parents. And it also allows you to talk with very clear virtual telephone. So you can do a video conferencing like I'm doing with you now with another parent, and you can do it. Here's another cool technology. It'll have simultaneous translation, so as I'm talking in English, the person on the other end can hear it in Spanish. And that's the Microsoft technology. So we want to create a global community where people around the world share information because, Shannon, if you go to places like Colombia and Russia, those parents are lost. They know nothing. They need to talk to parents in America and in other countries where they can help them understand their child. And this has been a dream of mine, is to create a global conversation with parents. And the parents can tell us what doctors are doing a good job for them, you know, what products are doing a good job for them. But it'll be run by a nonprofit organization.
Wonderful. And when do we think?
We think it'll be sometime. We bought the campus rights. We're creating CME courses. We're creating TED courses. We've sponsored with University of Georgia Public Health to help develop the curriculum. So we're hoping sometime in 2018. We still have to raise another couple of $3 million in money, which I'm doing. This is expensive stuff to do, but at the end of the day, everyone is going to just fall in love with this stuff.
Absolutely. So what haven't we covered here? There are things that are moving and happening. I know that parents are going to be frustrated in terms of that it takes time. But I wanted to make sure that parents knew, because sometimes you can feel so defeatist. But that thing I said in the beginning about brighter minds are working on this, and that we are getting to a point. It seems like the takeaways here for me are that we really have to take responsibility for whatever we can in this moment in times in terms of our environment. You talked about cleaning up your diet, getting as organic as possible, and gave the resource of the Environmental Working Group. We talk here on the show about their Dirty Dozen and their Clean 15, right. the 12 that you avoid at all costs, and the ones that you can look at and go, all right, if I can't buy this organic, then it's not as dirty. But you also talked about barriers for mattresses. Excuse me, I've never heard about that before. What is that?
Well, if you sleep on a mattress, it's loaded with antimony. That goes into baby's breast milk. It goes into your system. It's a dangerous metal and a chemical, and it's sprayed all over couches as well. And again, what we didn't anticipate are these chemicals cross over into the brain and into the placenta during pregnancy. We just have to lower our risk factors on this. The idea of flame retardant on a mattress, how many people really smoke in bed anymore? I mean, there's an old thinking, and we just douse our lives with chemicals. Febreze, everybody loves to use Febreze in the bathroom for good reason, but of the Febreze product, 63 chemicals, Shannon, 63 chemicals in Febreze, 37 of which are known carcinogens. Oh. Okay, well, use essential oils. Go down to Whole Foods, spray essential oils, same nice smell. Same thing with bug spray in the house. I've talked to parents that they had pesticide companies come in during the pregnancy and loaded the house with pesticides to kill the cockroaches and animals in the house, and little insects. You can go down to Whole Foods and get a citrus spray. Bugs keep out, but you can drink the stuff. Right. So we are in a new era. What I wanted to get across today is and I know our time is about up. I wanted to get across that there is a new sheriff in town, and that is environment is the cause of the chronic diseases, including autism. I want to get across that this has been a parent movement that has caused this, led by Bernie Rimland and leaders in the field like Doreen Grant-Pachet. And we have gotten that progress because of the parent movement and the wisdom of parents with direct eyewitness testimony that they've given. My allegiance is to parents and nobody else. We are going to have some solutions that will involve easy testing, easy things to do, inexpensive things to do, that will be available on a nonprofit campus, and we're going to begin a global discussion of getting better and unraveling chronic conditions in children. And look, unless we do this, newborn children will overwhelm the spending. We need spending for teenagers, and we need spending for adults with special needs, and money into education, and money into job training, money into financing at the end of life. And we're not going to get there if we have an ever-increasing number of sick children. It's $500 billion a year. So the strategy is, the parents got us here. The parents were way ahead of the scientists. The parents were smarter than me and everybody else. All I'm doing is I'm following a parent movement, and I'm trying to work a different angle of it. And I'm so grateful. Bernie Rimland told me I would never meet a parent with a child with autism I wouldn't like. And that's been true for the last 20 years. And I'm so grateful to be on this show and talking to you and getting a chance to spend my life doing this.
Well, we're so grateful that someone like you, who has a brain and a heart like you, is investing your time, energy, and money, and getting other people to as well, because this is all really important. We're really out of time, but I want to thank you so much. And please thank everyone at the Forum Institute for the work that they're doing, because I know you guys are toiling long into the night to bring things to us that will help improve our lives, our children's lives, and their children's lives. And I think that that's essential. And is there any place that we want to send people for more information yet, or hold off until the campus is open?
On an announcement, we're opening this. In the meantime, I think we've given some, and I want to shout out to you. This is a very important program. You bring a great people on. You've got a fantastic reputation. And with Doreen Grant-Pachet working with you guys and helping to support it, I just treasure what you do and respect a great deal what you do. So thank you very much.
Right back at you. Thank you so much. And we will look forward to having you back on the show when you've got even more to share with us. And as soon as those tests are ready, please, give us the high five, and we'll be talking about it here on the show.
Okay.
Maybe it's something Nancy and I can do, and then on the show and reveal our results and talk about what we need to do as a
Nancy
result.
is absolutely terrific. I haven't spent enough time with her, but every time I do, I just get so encouraged by what
Well,
she's doing with ACT today. It's a fantastic nonprofit.
Well, it's a love fest. She loves you too. So what a fabulous thing. Thank you so much for being with us.